Hey there everyone! Welcome back. My name is Raymond McNeil, and this is the second part of my series covering the Vic Mignogna vs. Funimation et al. Lawsuit. The previous video is where I clarified the purpose of the series and recapped the publicly known events leading into the lawsuit in question. The next 4 parts, I'll be covering the evidence presented to the court by both the plaintiff and the defendant in relation to the TCPA motions to dismiss. Now, before I dive into any of that, a few corrections and notes from the last video. 1. The TCPA is to stop frivolous lawsuits. That's the word I was looking for. The affidavits that were withdrawn by the plaintiff in the TCPA response were replaced with unsworn declarations. That was a mix-up on my part. But in terms of evidentiary weight, it doesn't change much. The fiancé of Monica Rial is named Ronald Toye, not Toye. In fairness, I think calling him Toye does him more favors than not. I think it's a much stronger pronunciation of his last name. But do know that he technically pronounces it Toy. I just prefer Toye. It sounds better to my ear. Finally, Jamie Marchi, as far as I can find, never worked for Channel Awesome, and I can only figure I got that wrong because some of my sources confused her for Mars Girl, and I got equally as confused. I actually didn't think she did, but it was something that I forgot to double check, and so I want to apologize for any confusion there, and thank you to all the comments for calling me out on every one of those issues. Friendly reminder that I am not a lawyer, so none of this video should be legally binding in any way, and you should not take it as any form of legal advice. Don't cry to me if you get arrested, don't cry about me if you get arrested. You are not my problem, and I am not yours. Now, before we head into the evidence, I feel it's probably best we examine what evidence is, since it's important to define our terms so we're all on the same page. Evidence, as defined under the law, is information given personally, drawn from a document, or in the form of material objects, tending or used to establish facts in a legal investigation or admissible as testimony in court. Then, depending on what lawyers in the case are trying to prove and the standards of evidence at play under the law, it is weighed under a specific methodology by the judge to find a resolution between the two parties in dispute. There are a couple of standards of evidence you may be familiar with from pop culture, so let's use these as examples of what I mean by methodologies. Proof beyond a reasonable doubt is only really used in criminal cases, and what it means is that the evidence presented must absolutely show that this person committed the crime. There can be little doubt there is an alternative theory at play. Clear and convincing evidence is a standard of evidence one step down from beyond a reasonable doubt. Basically, you must prove there is a high probability the events alleged occurred. There can be some doubt, just not too much. I know that's a very scientific measurement, but you quickly learn that there are very strong gray areas in law, typically by design. This standard of evidence is typically used in civil court, though it can be used in parts of criminal cases as well. The last common standard of evidence is preponderance of the evidence, where the evidence presented must be weighed on a scale and someone alleging a claim must only prove a 51% probability the events they described occurred. And, like clear and convincing evidence, it can be used in civil cases and aspects of criminal cases. So normally, a judge or jury must weigh the evidence under one of these 3 restrictions. However, in this case, at least under the rules of the Texas Citizens Participation Act, which it was dismissed under, all evidence is to be viewed in the light most beneficial to the plaintiff without any kind of rebuttal. There's no weighing the evidence in this circumstance. Every piece of evidence is put forth, and they are to be viewed as beneficial to prove that the plaintiffs are bringing a legitimate case forward as possible. Which means every piece of evidence I'm going to cover today in this video, every single piece, must be perceived in the way that is most beneficial to Vic Mignogna, at least in relation to the TCPA motion to dismiss. Keep that in mind. Now, if the case makes it past appeals and goes forward as the plaintiff hopes, the standards of evidence is preponderance of the evidence for most defamation cases, and I believe all the other claims that he has made. We'll revisit this should the case make it past TCPA. We're finally transitioning into the actual evidence. The reason I've chosen to draw from the TCPA documents and not from any other is that these submissions are the most relevant to the dismissal of the case and were the only evidence considered for the dismissal of the case. Considering how heavily some of the defendant's arguments err on the veracity of the accusations against Vic, these documents are the closest we get to a complete picture regarding Vic's reputation unless the dismissal is overruled on appeal. I will be using the most updated version of each party's filings, even the ones that have been disputed. This way you have the most information to inform your opinions on the matter. Now keep in mind there is quite a bit of evidence to parse through. Funimation provided 28 pieces of evidence, RWBY and Toei provided 23 pieces of evidence, and Jamie Marchi provided about 4, though within all of these there are multiple instances of nested evidence. This is also not accounting for the plaintiffs, whose document doesn't seem to number their exhibits, but one of them includes over 400 tweets from Ronald Toye, or around 400 tweets. I don't know if it's exactly over. There are differing numbers that go around. I haven't counted them individually, so I'm not entirely sure. I'm going to try and be selective with some of the evidence being presented, but I'm scared to cut anything because this evidence is being presented for a reason on both sides. I'll also try to clean up any overlap that might occur between presentations, because things like Vic's deposition get repeated in every single filing. All of that out of the way, let's dive right into this. In this video, we'll be covering the unique evidence presented by Funimation and Jamie Marchi. Now, for anyone that wants to read along, the court documents are available in the links down below for your own viewing pleasure, courtesy, unfortunately, of the very pro-Vic Kiwi Farms. I couldn't find a neutral hosting site for these documents. I understand that a lot of people have issues against the Kiwi Farms, and it's not completely unfounded, but they've done a good job of actually listing the raw documents of the case. If you're part of the Kick Vic persuasion, I encourage you to still utilize those sites, those links, just as a resource for the documents in question. Ignore all else. I completely understand that. I'm not going to ask you to do anything beyond that. If I miss a detail that you feel is important, don't be afraid to let me know in the comments down below. Feel free to comment your thoughts on the matter as well, so long as it's polite and genial. Don't get into spats with people down in the comments if they disagree. Kick Vic, pro Vic, I don't care. Just be kind to each other, guys. So, all of that finally out of the way, let's dive in to Funimation's documents. Alright, so here they are, Funimation's first exhibit, Exhibit A. The Affidavit of Karen Mika. Now, for definition's sake, as you'll be hearing it a lot, an affidavit is a legally sworn statement for use as evidence in court. So what I'm about to recount is what Karen Mika has to say in relation to this case. I have summarized these. I'm listing it on screen for everyone's benefit, so you can kind of parse through it alongside me. You can understand the document that I'm reading from. Now, Karen Mika is the Funimation Vice President of Operations. She is the one that directed Trina Simons of Human Resources to contact Sony to investigate the accusations against Vic Mignogna. Simon then contacted Zach Hall, Executive Director of Sony Human Resources. She is the one that made the ultimate call to fire Vic, and she's not really involved in the facts of the case. She's just the person that pulled the trigger on Vic based upon what the investigation informed her. She also tries to draw a very clear line between the functions of Funimation and the tweets or social media of Monica Rial, Ronald Toye, and Jamie Marchi, which is to try and distance themselves from the actions of individuals. The next exhibit is the affidavit of Tammy Denbo, the Sony Executive Director of Employee Relations. She is the one that investigated into the allegations. She was given notably nebulous information of allegations from 2 female fans of inappropriate conduct, as well as the accusations by Monica Rial and an ex-Funimation employee. She conducted telephone interviews with 2 potential witnesses on January 22nd, 2019. She interviewed Rial by phone on January 23rd, 2019. Interviewed the 2 alleging female fans on January 24th, 2019. In this time, she is informed of the ex-employee making accusations against Vic. She then interviewed Mignogna on January 25th, 2019. She then concludes, based solely upon her interviews, that all the allegations were credible against Vic and submitted her report. Next up is the affidavit of Scott Barretto, the Funimation Senior Director of Public Relations. He was quick to point to hashtag #IStandWithVic as harassers of the anime community and the hashtag #KickVic community. He also testified to the creation of Funimation's public statements, noting that it was Funimation that made the call to make the statement and not him, which I think is a very interesting thing, because I think he himself is trying to distance himself from Funimation in this circumstance if they are found liable for anything said in that statement. I find that very amusing. He added also a line in there that, it was added in there, a line to discourage harassment. That's probably the line that is under dispute by the plaintiff, where basically it implies that Vic is a harasser, which will be very interesting to see that argued in court if it ever makes it there. He also points out that Funimation's statements are all true by technical definition, which is not wrong necessarily. He points out that everything that Funimation said in those statements were technically true, devoid of context, and that's what I think the plaintiff is going to try and argue about Funimation's tweet. He also gives this handy list of things, which is basically all the evidence in this case, and it made it very easy to organize. Importantly, the next piece of evidence is Vic Mignogna's January 20th, 2019 tweet, which will become a recurring piece of evidence. This tweet is used to make a list of apologies and refutations towards the several accusations against Vic. This is all by Vic's own words. Vic stands adamant as a supporter of the LGBTQ community. Vic refutes all accusations of anti-Semitism and relates that one joke he made in reference to a Holocaust was not in reference to the Holocaust. He was using the technical term of the phrase. Vic apologizes to any con workers he may have made uncomfortable and explains that certain agreements made with con owners were not honored, leading to frustration. He does not use that as an excuse for poor behavior, though, and apologizes regardless. He apologizes for anyone feeling uncomfortable in interacting with him, citing an affectionate home life that shaped his behavior and his current choice to refrain in the future from having this sort of physical interaction with fans. He also ends it with a complete and utter denial of any and all sexual harassment, sexual assault, and pedophilia. Below that, there's also a list of notable tweets in reply to this. So these are all... I'm not entirely sure how relevant these are to the case. I don't believe there's any party involved in the case making these accusations, so we can't verify any of the claims in here. So I overlooked it. The next piece of evidence is Polygon's January 25th, 2019 article about Victor Mignogna. There's nothing too notable in here, aside from a simple recounting of the accusations made against Vic. However, I think, and this applies to each document in this case, hyperlinks do not work when submitting evidence to the court. So any accusations listed in this article or the others are not submitted themselves. As such, these articles hold very little evidence surrounding Vic's innocence. They are more likely, this and future articles, which there are a lot of news articles that I'm going to be skimming over in the future here that have been included, they're more than likely being used to demonstrate the public knowledge of the accusations against Vic and to some way establish his celebrity so that he can fall under a much harsher standard of evidence to prove defamation. So I think these articles are less being used to prove Vic is a pedophile and more to prove the rumors occurred. The rumors have been around for a while. I mean, that's what I'm trying to say. That they're being used to prove that the rumors have been around for a while and that Vic is in fact a celebrity and falls under the public figure clause of defamation cases. The next piece of evidence is Anime News Network's January 30th, 2019 article about Vic. Unlike most of the other articles, which I'll be skimming over, just referencing they exist in this document, this article on the Vic case is notable because of a retraction that needed to be made. A fan of Vic had their photograph with him stolen and published in this article against her consent. She has gone on to correct the record on the matter and affirm that she has no issues with Vic or the events happening around that photo, which will come into play questioning the veracity of at least this article, if not later articles, because that retraction needed to be made. The next one is Anime News Network's February 4th article, 2019, about Victor Mignogna. The next article is the Anime News Network's February 5th, 2019 article about Vic Mignogna. The next one is Polygon's February 5th, 2019 article about Vic Mignogna. Now, the next piece of evidence is Vic Mignogna's February 8th, 2019 tweet. In this tweet, Vic is addressing threats made by people who support him against those that decry him and doing what he can to tell people to stop. Do note that Vic has no control over these people, so what he says is basically screaming into the void, but I can't blame him for doing it. I can understand feeling kind of guilty that all of a sudden your followers are attacking people. He does end this with a secondary tweet that calls for love, peace, and understanding, hippie crap, and all that. And again, there's a lot of replies that I don't know how relevant replies on Twitter are to this case. The next piece of evidence is Anime News Network's February 9th, 2019 article about Vic Mignogna. The next piece of evidence is Funimation's February 11th, 2019 tweet, and we can finally get into some of the details that I was mentioning earlier. Funimation announces that Vic has been replaced on Mononoke Season 2, and that they will no longer engage with him in the future. An additional tweet clarifies they do not condone harassment or threatening behavior directed at anyone. And then they have a third tweet on top of that to edit some spelling mistakes or some grammatical mistakes, and I don't know why they just didn't delete the original tweet and replace it. We've been fine. But that's that. Following this are, of course, reply tweets, but none of them seem relevant to the case at hand or really any kind of helpful. It's just people kind of complaining back and forth on the subject matter. So I don't think it's going to be used as evidence in any kind of case. The next piece of evidence is Polygon's February 11th article about Vic Mignogna. The next piece of evidence is Vic Mignogna's February 13th, 2019 tweet. In this tweet, he has more apologies for others being uncomfortable with any of his behavior. Additionally, he expresses regret towards any words or actions that made his colleagues uncomfortable. He also says that he is recommitting to God and seeking a counselor and committed to improving not only himself, but everyone he interacts with. He ends asking that everyone be kind to each other. Again, more replies. Don't know if they're going to be relevant at all. It seemed, again, more like infighting than typically anything else. The next piece of evidence is Anime News Network's February 14th, 2019 article about Vic Mignogna. The next piece of evidence is IO9's February 19th, 2019 article about Vic Mignogna, which, fun fact, Vic, even though this was effectively a slam piece against him, I mean, all these articles are effectively just recounting the accusations and slamming Vic for this kind of behavior, he did in his deposition say that he liked this photo. He thought it was pretty cool, which I found somewhat amusing. But we'll get to that when we finally get to his deposition in 3 episodes. There's a lot to cover. But yes, this article is more recounting the same things we've heard from the other articles. It's more people recounting their stories about Vic, typically anonymously, that sort of thing. The next piece of evidence is Anime News Network's February 20th, 2019 article about a swatting incident. In this article, voice actress Samantha Inu Hart from Psycho Studios claims that she received a phone call from a fake phone that informed her that she had been swatted while she had been out and away. She arrived at her rental home, and she found that the door had been kicked in and contacted the police as a result. She then attributed the vandalism to supporters of Vic Mignogna. This article further covers the scrutiny she received after it was discovered that the photo she used in her Facebook post about the incident had been posted to her Facebook in 2016, 3 years ago, or 3 years prior, following an attempted burglary. She did defend her choice, citing a photo from the front door would have exposed her address. She also provides a police report that proves that the door was in fact smashed in the timetable she gave in 2019. The next exhibits, there's a whole list of, I think, 6 of them that are all news articles. Anime News Network from February 20th, 2019 about Vic. Screen Rant from February 25th, 2019 about Vic. Anime News Network from March 24th, 2019 about Vic. Newsweek article about Vic from April 19th, 2019. Polygon's article on Vic from April 19th, 2019. And Variety's article on Vic from April 19th, 2019. The final piece of evidence listed in the original filing of Funimation's TC PA I don't know why I forgot how to say TCPA, is Vic Mignogna's IMDb, which is just his list of roles and credits, I suppose, going towards his celebrity, the celebrity prong of the case, which, increases Vic's burden to prove defamation. Nothing really notable here, except did you know that Vic voices Bubsy Bobcat from Bubsy 3D or the Bubsy series? I mean, why isn't he in jail already for this? Like, we're all complaining about this whole, sexual assault thing. He should be in jail for this! Now, there are 4 more pieces of evidence that the Funimation has listed in their filings with an amendment to their original filing. But that amendment is pending, effectively. It's not been confirmed whether it's been struck from the record or not. But the information inside of it has already been provided by other sources, so we're going to actually be covering those in depth at a later point, including one in the next segment we're about to do. But they are the depositions of Vic Mignogna, the deposition of Monica Rial, and the deposition of Ronald Toye, as well as the declaration of Jamie Marchi. All 4 of these will be covered in a future part, but it's just for housekeeping reasons, just know that they are technically in the filings for Funimation as well. That's the end of it for Funimation, and we can move on to the much more truncated evidence of Jamie Marchi. Now, Jamie Marchi has the smallest pool of evidence to date, and a lot of them... I said that she had 4 pieces of evidence. I don't know exactly how I got that count. There's a lot of evidence folded into evidence. So along with her declaration, there's a lot of different pieces of evidence that come along with it. But the real meat of her situation is her declaration to the court, which is basically it's basically her affidavit. It's a sworn statement for the court, saying what happened and how. So we'll go through the declaration, and that's really all that's going to be for Marchi, but we'll see. Jamie Marchi is a voice actress and writer primarily in the anime industry. In 2011, she was in Funimation's lobby when greeted by Vic. They hugged, which was a common greeting for actors that worked together. She then describes that Vic started running his fingers through her hair, which made her uncomfortable. She thought it would end as quickly as it began. Vic then supposedly grabbed her hair by the root and yanked her head backwards. He then leaned in and whispered something sexual into her ear, though she cannot recall the phrase in question. Despite being shocked and stunned, she dismissed the encounter and did not file a complaint. She states that Vic is widely known in the anime world and has a broad legion of fans, and he is ubiquitous on anime convention circuits. She felt as though a public challenge to Vic would end her career. After seeing other women express various experiences with Vic in January 2019, Marchi made a Twitter statement about her experiences on February 8th, 2019. Since telling her story, she has been waylaid by trolls, allegedly doing Vic and his attorney's bidding. She admits to having anger towards Vic for the hurt she endured. She states that she did not communicate with Funimation regarding Vic during the actual investigation segment of Funimation's consideration to fire him, and did not reach out to any conventions. Additional documents, including tweets, statements, and legal letters such as the request to preserve stored info from Vic's attorneys, are listed below in this affidavit, or in this declaration. After this declaration, there's only one other piece of evidence, and that is the deposition of Victor Mignogna, which again, we'll get to in a later section. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is all the relevant evidence presented by Funimation and Jamie Marchi. The next video will feature the evidence as presented by Monica Rial and Ronald Toye. If you found this recap informative, please like this video and hit that subscribe button and ring that bell. For more consistent updates, you can find me on Twitter at Raymond McNeil. Additionally, if you want to contribute directly to the channel, you can always donate to my Patreon at patreon.com/CelticPhoenix. For $1 or more, you get access to the Team Frostbite Discord server, where I and many other personalities that I interact with on a regular interact with our fans. Thank you all so much for watching, and I hope to catch you all in the next video.